everyone, and welcome to the 41st episode of the Plug in Play podcast. I am your host, Henry, and here we like to talk about video games. Hope you like to listen about video games, but we have a... I normally say this is where I normally say we have a jam-packed episode today. Fortunately for me, as a podcaster who's solo and has to do all the talking himself, not as jam-packed as usual. News this week been pretty light, but we do have a lot of interesting beta impressions. We have the Battlefield 6 beta, very big deal in the gaming community right now. I took a look at that. The Dragon Drive open beta, which is now out. By the time you're listening, it is out for you to play. We'll talk about that. Adventures of Elliot, the most underwhelming name I've ever heard for a JRPG. Took a look at that demo. And of course, for the news, we have a little bit old, a little bit cold. But Bioshock 4, hey, what's happening with that? That's like not even happening anymore. It looks like some major shakeups with Bioshock 4 and the remake that was rumored. I think maybe even confirmed there for a bit. But that's pretty much the main gist of it. Hopefully that hooked you. That's what it's supposed to do. I'm trying to keep the energy high. Really, we're waiting for those impressions. The impression segment seems to be the juicy part of this show, for sure. But before we get into that, I have to do my influencer thing. I have to tell you to give us a rating. You know, we're on everything you want to listen to. We're on your Apples, your Spotifys, I say Podcast Addict every time, but I think we're pretty much everywhere. I mean, if you look, I think that's what Anchor just does automatically. Is it just kind of shoves me everywhere just to put me in every nook and cranny of the corner of the internet that it can. Give us a like, give us a comment. Why not, rate us, hopefully highly. You can send us an email at pluginplaypodcast1@gmail.com. It's in the description if you can't remember that. You can be a part of the show. Send us in a question, comment, concern, and I will read it on the podcast for you. Or you can just send me a nice little private letter and we can both, have a special moment together in private via email. And you know what? While you're there in the description, there's also some timestamps. If you don't like what I'm talking about, you want to just skip to what I think about the Battlefield 6 beta, you can click on those. It's a labor of love. I do it for you. But ladies and gentlemen, before I get into that, I think I'm just going to talk briefly about the Twisted Metal TV show. Twisted Metal Season 2, currently airing on Peacock. I am actually caught up with it, surprisingly so. Watched all of Season 1 back when it originally aired. If you're unfamiliar, Twisted Metal is a PlayStation game from a long time ago that has had an interesting trajectory over the years in terms of it started off on the PlayStation 1, has kind of ebbed and flowed in popularity. They tried to reboot it on the PlayStation 3, didn't do so hot, and then it kind of just died. It's known for its very edgy aesthetic, car combat, directed by David Jaffe, who you may also know as the director of the original God of War 1. And they turned it into a show, as they seem to be doing a good bit for PlayStation's properties. Obviously, we have the Last of Us show that was a big success. We have the God of War show is in production. Ghost of Tsushima show is in production. Obviously, Uncharted was turned into a movie, with Tom Holland. So obviously Sony is trying to cross-pollinate. What's the word? Is that the word I'm looking for? Maybe not. Probably not. It's IP. There is a synergy. That's the word I was looking for. Corporate synergy. We're utilizing the IP in multiple ways across multiple assets of their business. Obviously, Sony is also a media company in general. You probably recognize Sony Pictures as their movie brand, but we're kind of getting off on a long tangent there. Twisted Metal. The first season, I was incredibly underwhelmed with. Not necessarily a fan of Twisted Metal per se. I have exposure to the series. I played those games at a friend's house when I was very young. Never really got super attached to it. Really thought it was an interesting idea as a kid. Really loved the personality behind the game as a kid. And then I never really got into the game as a game pretty much ever. I played Twisted Metal, the reboot on PlayStation 3. At one point it was it was rebooted and given out for free, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'll try it out. It's supposed to be kind of a big deal. And I always thought it was fine. Never delved into it. Again, it's mostly multiplayer. Really just have never been into car combat as a whole. Just never really grabbed me as much as a normal, traditional multiplayer kind of would be. Just the controls in general for car combat, I guess, are just not... I'm not a big driving game guy. So, I think it's kind of... You have to be... Driving games are obviously some of the biggest games on the planet. Gran Turismo, one of the best-selling PlayStation games ever. But, I feel like it's kind of a cross of, if you like Call of Duty and Gran Turismo, and I'm like, that's really neither one of those are my speed. Never got super into it, but always enjoyed the story and characters of Twisted Metal were actually what stood out to me the most. If you're unaware, Twisted Metal is a tournament. It is based on a tournament where kind of a mad, evil magician of sorts named Calypso offers a bunch of crazy people, if they win a death battle in their cars, a singular wish. And at the end of each character's campaign, you get to see a little cutscene where you get to see how their wish is granted, and it's always granted in a monkey's paw kind of way. So they wish for something, and they get the worst possible outcome of that wish every time. So personally, when I heard Twisted Metal was being turned into a TV show, I was like, that honestly sounds kind of cool. Like a death tournament, where only one person can win, and they get a wish at the end. This could be a setup for a really interesting and cool narrative. And yeah, I mean, they gave it to the producers of Deadpool and the writers of Deadpool. So it's really it's not a serious show at all. It's really a comedy show. And the first season, I really didn't like the main characters. I really wasn't attached to them at all. The only good part of season 1 is really the ending, which is all of season 1, if you aren't familiar, has nothing to do with the death battle, the tournament. That is actually what would make the series interesting. It has no connection to that at all. And so really the only interesting part about it was freaking Sweet Tooth. Sweet Tooth is always a fun thing when he's on screen. And the thing is that's not very often. I can't remember the name. Anthony Mackie, I think is it. He's the protagonist, the new Captain America. And I don't know, he didn't do it for me, man. He did not grab me. The characters in general, I think I hated Quiet. It was Quiet is the sidekick, the female love interest of sorts. Very, very unlikable in the first season to me. So season 2, I was like, well, we're getting into the start of this tournament. This could be it. This could actually be what this series needs to actually be good. And the tournament doesn't start. I'm about 7 episodes in. At the time of recording, that's what's out. And yeah, the tournament doesn't even start until episode 6. It's we still have another 6 episodes of build up and it's pretty rushed build up too, because we really didn't do much of build up for the tournament at all in season 1. So we're kind of rushing that into progress and building it up in a way that I still don't think is very good. None of the main characters are still very likable. The story itself, not very good, not very well structured or interesting. It's clearly more so trying to be funny than anything else. And let's be real, Twisted Metal has a sense of humor. It is a very dark sense of humor, and it's definitely there in Twisted Metal, but it is not a comedy game. It's clearly not a comedy game. You can look at anything of the original Twisted Metals and see it's obviously not a funny game, but it definitely has funny elements. It is a very twisted sort of humor. This is not that at all. This is, hey, did you watch Deadpool? A wacky, zany, Looney Tunes-esque kind of comedy. We're kind of way more in that lane of comedy with with Twisted Metal season 1 and 2, and I can't say the vibe is very in line with what I was expecting coming from the games, but again, you hand it off to different people and you tell them basically do whatever you want with it because nobody really cares about this series anymore. Sure, I guess, you're going to get what you get, but, like, I don't know. I've definitely gotten a few chuckles out of it, but, like, I just thought this series could be so much more than it is. And like I said, still don't care about the main characters. If anything, they introduced another main character, Mayhem, and, like, she's not very likable either. I don't really like her. Like, characters do things that I don't really particularly find, like, even the main characters with, like, Anthony Mackie's supposed to be, like, this everyman, like, likable guy, and I just don't think he fits well in the show, and I also don't think he's very likable in general. Not in general, but, like, he does things that I'm like, what the frick, this is just dumb. Like, I don't know. You gotta watch the show, I guess, to find out. But I honestly wouldn't recommend it. Even as a person who's pretty familiar with the games, the only thing I'm really getting from this is like, oh yeah, this is a reference to the show. But I really wouldn't even say it's like that loyal to it. Like even the racers, a lot of the racers are based off of racers from the game. But there are weirdly like several racers that aren't from the games either, or like they're taken out of context from like the games that they're from. So like Dollface is one of the main racers of the series, but like she's in like the reboot in PlayStation 3. She was never included in the original Twisted Metal at all. So like it's kind of pulling from wherever it wants to and kind of twisting some things a little bit in a way to just kind of fit whatever it wants to do. And overall, it's still what I would kind of expect from a Twisted Metal show. It's just overall, I just don't really care about most of the characters or what's going on. And again, this just had such an interesting concept and characters that I was like, surely this is a slam dunk, you know? By the way, I suppose I should say, the original season of Twisted Metal on Peacock was Peacock's most viewed show ever. Just let that sink in. Yeah, have you watched Twisted Metal on Peacock? I already know the answer to that is no. No, you have not. So, you know, like, clearly it's just nothing was on Peacock. Nobody cared about anything on Peacock, and so they just watched Twisted Metal because that was literally it. So, you know, I think Twisted Metal is the best by default in terms of Peacock's ratings there. But, yeah, I'm sure Peacock Season 2 of Twisted Metal is doing fine for them. It's actually gotten pretty good critic reviews, or I don't know, what do you call it? To Rotten Tomato? I think it's like certified fresh on Rotten Tomato or something weird like that. I don't really agree with that. If that's what we consider like a premium, whatever the heck, I don't really use Rotten Tomato a lot, so I don't know what qualifies as like, this is good. But if this is what we consider to be like really good, I don't know, dude. Like, I'm only watching it because I am a fan of the series / video games in general, and I think this show is just okay. Like, you could maybe convince me the show is good. It is certainly not great. It is somewhere in the range of okay to good, which is like, if that's what you're looking for, and like you are a really big Twisted Metal fan, I guess, you can watch this show and maybe enjoy it. You know, again, some interesting and fun bits, some fun episodes in Season 2. Definitely think Season 2 is better than Season 1, but like, I don't know. There was not much to like in Season 1, and you have to get through Season 1 in order to understand Season 2. So, I don't know. Overall, this show is just fine. It's there, and that's the most I can say about it. And that's not very strong praise. So, yeah. That is my update on Twisted Metal Season 2. Maybe I'll come back and follow that up and see if it gets any better and talk about that. Really don't expect that, though. This is going to stay where it is for the rest of this series. I can't imagine it getting any better. But anyway, moving on to the news. Yes, everybody's favorite, at least my favorite segment. Very dry week for news. You know, as a guy who follows the news cycle with the video game industry, you know, I follow a lot of big personalities that try to talk about it, and dang, people were scraping the bottom of the barrel for this week or the past 2 weeks. It has really been not great. Now, by the time you're listening to this, I'm recording this in advance, a few days in advance, but by the time you're listening to this, the day of this podcast goes live, It is now Gamescom, so really bad timing for me. If I did a podcast every 3 weeks, this would be a lot easier. But Gamescom happening the day of me dropping this podcast. So if you aren't familiar, Gamescom is kind of like really the closest thing we have to E3 now. And Jeff Keighley's going to be running the presser for that, the conference. It's out in Germany, I think. It's way out there. And it's going to be a lot of announcements. Going to be a lot of cool stuff, I'm sure. We've gotten a couple of rumors circulating as to what to see there. Xbox going to have a major presence. Several other big publishers going to be showing off some really interesting games. Demos playable on the show floor. Very interesting stuff. But I don't know anything about that because it has not happened, so I can't talk about it. And by the time I actually am able to talk about it, 2 weeks after I have recorded, as this podcast goes live, the news will likely be somewhat dry as well, somewhat cold and stale. But I'm going to talk about it anyway because I like talking about it. It's all about the conversation here, folks. And I like the conversation with myself, apparently. But anyway, a lot of headlines, but they were all really small. Like one I have on the docket for this week, and I was like, do I even really want to talk about this, is Microsoft cancels Avalanche Studios' Contraband. What do you have to say about that? How can you stretch that out? Did you know Microsoft is canceling games? Well, guess what? They've also shut down some studios recently and laid off thousands of people. Like, this just seems like such a minor blip in the system comparative to... And by the way, Contraband is a game we literally seen just a teaser trailer with the title for it in 2021. So 4 years ago. Avalanche Studios, obviously the people who made Just Cause series, a fun little series, open world series where you blow stuff up. It's a fun little jaunt. I'd recommend it. Certainly the wingsuit and the grapple. Super fun little mechanics they have in those games. But yeah, I mean, this is just, again, such a minor blip in the overall Microsoft story that has been unfolding over the past several months. This just seems like an obvious one. We haven't heard anything about it in years. This is just another show of like, well, guess what? Microsoft showed off a game way too early. Like, yeah, I know. Have you heard of like State of Decay 3? You know, like there's like a million other games that Microsoft showed off like years ago when they were trying to show like we have things that are coming down the pipe, and like none of them have come out yet. You know, have you heard of Fable? You know, like all this stuff that was shown off clearly way too early. One of those games was just freaking canceled. One of the rare games, Everbound, whatever, I can't remember what the name of it is. We'll never see it, so I don't have to remember. But you know, like this just seems like such a minor blip. It's like, yeah, is it a news story? Is it worth talking about? Sure, it's a news story, but is it worth talking about for like 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes? Absolutely not. This is like a bullet point. But that's like everything from the past 2 weeks. The only like, and I'll get into the small one first. We'll get into Bioshock in just a minute. That's the only hot thing that happened in the past 2 weeks, really. The one thing I brought up, this is also kind of a bullet point, but I can turn it into something more, is the Dragon Age remake was shot down multiple times by EA. So this is coming from a Mr. Matty Plays interview, YouTuber. He interviewed a longtime BioWare veteran at EA, and they were pretty much kind of upset that EA has not made Dragon Age remakes yet. So they obviously made the Mass Effect Legacy Collection a few years back. So that's, Mass Effect 1 through 3. Pretty much remastered, put on PC, PlayStation, all of the above. And, they haven't done the same thing with Dragon Age. And they were like, okay, well, why is that? And they kind of basically said, well, one, EA is pretty much against remakes in general, which is, again, weird because they've made Mass Effect remake very recently. You think that wouldn't be something they would be against if they just did that, but they have publicly come out on like shareholder calls and been like, yeah, we don't really love the idea of remakes. I think everybody kind of looks at them as free money. And even this developer said that during the interview. It's like, hey, like, I don't know why they're against free money, because remakes are typically very easy to recreate. And by easy, I mean they're very cheap to recreate. There's not a lot of money that goes into producing them because you've already got the original material. You don't have to make everything from scratch. You have a blueprint. And obviously, people buy them. Like, I bought the not the GTA, the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, or collection. I bought that because I love Mass Effect. We'll talk about Bioshock in a minute, but I love Bioshock, so I would have bought a remake for that. And I obviously bought Resident Evil 4 remake. I bought Dead Space remake last year. Both are great games. Those obviously had a lot of touch-ups and tune-ups to them. Dragon Age, I think, was going to be more so a direct port. But, like, I think if you give me any reason to play a game again, I'll probably take it as long as I really love that game. And, like, Dragon Age is a series that I really love. Not only that, but you get people who maybe missed the originals way back in the day and see that as an opportunity to jump in, kind of like me with, like, Final Fantasy Tactics. I missed Final Fantasy Tactics a long time ago, and I'm really looking forward to the Final Fantasy Tactics remake coming out in September. So, that's easy money. Easy money. You get people to pick up a game that you basically already made that took you very little money to produce, right? EA, for some reason, doesn't love this. I need to go back and probably check their reasonings as to why, but I guess they probably just don't make as much money on the margin as what they would like. EA is kind of one of those big returns companies. They really want games to boom in terms of what they are putting out. It's like if you're making a couple of million off of the Dragon Age remake, that's not worth it to them. Like, they're a publicly traded company. They want big returns. They want to see 500 million as a return. They don't want to see 1 or 2. So, like, 1 or 2 million, hey, I would be happy with obviously 1 or 2 million, but, like, that's chump change to EA. They don't give a frick. So, it's probably why they think that. Remakes probably make money, but not as money as you would want from a company like EA. So maybe that's why. But the issue that they kind of cited is from the development standpoint of probably why it hadn't happened yet is Mass Effect was made on the same engine, Unreal. So it was really easy, especially given the prevalence of Unreal Engine currently, to port that. All of the games being on the same engine, you could easily up-res all of them. And then Dragon Age was not. Dragon Age was made on multiple different engines across all 3 games. And that was pretty much the explanation as to why. It's like, well, like, we'd have to go back and figure out how to basically alter everything within the engine to fit Unreal. And we don't know how long that would take or how much of an effort that would be. So it would probably be a little bit more of an expensive remake. And now he said he's been asking for this for years, and EA has turned him down every time. Obviously, Veilguard came out last year, and it was my winner for most disappointing game of 2024. As a Dragon Age fan, it was my winner. If you can't go back and watch my Game of the Year episode right now. I think I've talked about that in the past, but Square Enix does not like using copyright material in your podcast. Don't play One Winged Angel in your podcast, ladies and gentlemen. But anyway, it was my winner for so I gave it an award for most disappointing game of 2024, and that was Veilguard. To me, I was clearly not the only one who thought this. No one bought the game. It went way under EA's expectations in terms of people who played it, yet alone bought it. And because obviously you can play the game in more ways than just, the terminology they used in their press release was it engaged, quote unquote, 1.5 million players, and they were expecting it to sell 3 million. So, like, you could buy it at GameStop used or something, or a friend could lend it to you, or you could pirate it, and you could technically use that as stats to, like, how many copies Veilguard engaged, because you just have to play it. So, like, who knows what exactly they were including in all of those stats, but, like, Veilguard also didn't review very well. I think ended up at like a 77, 78 on Metacritic, which is pretty low for this game, I would say. People clearly weren't happy with it. It was a very big political divisive game. People didn't like the politics that were in the game. Objectively, all around, I don't think anybody was happy with Veilguard. I don't think a soul was happy about Veilguard. And sorry, you know, like, if I was EA, I would say this series is dead. As a gamer who knows EA well enough, Dragon Age is dead. Like, that, what Veilguard was Dragon Age's last shot to be an IP, and it failed. It took the test of having a reboot years later, and it failed. Nobody wanted it. Nobody was interested in it. People hated it more than they liked it. If I was EA, I say, cool. Not only the studio's on ice, the IP is on ice, everything is on ice. Nobody deserves anything more from this. We're done. So I think why I bring this up and why I go into detail on it is to say I'm a big fan of Dragon Age. I like the universe. I like the games, specifically like Dragon Age Origins. It's one of my favorite games growing up. And it's really sad. It's really sad that we likely will never get another Dragon Age game. I think this is just kind of cementing, like, yeah, EA really just doesn't want anything to do with this IP anymore. Like, just let it die, and that's it. And, you know, unfortunate. It is what it is, though, and we move on with our lives. I have a million other games to play, and, you know, now we have Baldur's Gate that's back in prime territory again. You know, if you didn't know, Dragon Age was a spin-off of, or not a spin-off, but like a spiritual successor, that's the word I was looking for, is a spiritual successor to Baldur's Gate. It was some of the original BioWare developers came from the studio that made the original Baldur's Gates. And so the Dragon Age has a lot of similarities, a lot of crossovers between the universes, because they were made by some of the same team. But, you know, so now we have Baldur's Gate that's kind of just doing Dragon Age again. So, and better, in all honesty, in a lot of ways. You know, it doesn't have the same characters and writing that the original BioWare games did. They're legendary for that, but still very, very good all around, everything about it. So can't complain. As long as we get more of that, I really have no issues. So it's really sad for me to say that in like one breath, saying, yeah, well, I'm very sad this IP is dead, but at the other time being like, yeah, well, I got other things to play. That's just, I don't know. The times we live in, right? That's just where we're at. Speaking of the times we live in, this really has nothing to do with the times we live in, but it was a segue I could utilize. So, big news dropped I think the day I recorded my last podcast. So, this was probably a little cold at the moment, but it's the only thing anybody could talk about, and I do think it is interesting. I think in a week of big news, this would have been a blip on the radar, but like I think there's enough to dig through here that it is certainly still worth talking about. So, Bioshock 4. Bioshock 4, the long-anticipated Bioshock 4. Leadership has been replaced, or just removed, and the remake has been shelved, according to 2K. So this has been over the course of a couple days. Bloomberg, Jason Schreier, the video game news god, dropped an article, and he said, hey, got some insider tidbits and tricks, little bit of stuff from 2K coming out. Cloud Chamber, the studio head, has been removed from Bioshock 4, and the creative director of Bioshock 4 has been demoted to the producer role, or to a producer role. 2K, quote-unquote, said, the narrative was in particular need of improvement. If you haven't played a Bioshock game before, I guess I'll start kind of tangenting off. There's several more bullet points to this story that I think are of note. Bioshock, obviously one of the greatest games of all time. I'm just going to throw that out there. I don't think it's a controversial opinion. I love the game. I think a lot of people love the game. Certainly considered to be one of the more notable narratives in video game history. Here we are. That quote is a particular problem. Bioshock, the original Bioshock, great game, one of my favorite games of all time. It's just an all-around fun classic of a game. Really wouldn't mind going back and replaying that any day of the week. Bioshock 2 is, I think, a criminally underrated game. Certainly not as good as Bioshock 1, but like I think if the original studio made it, people would probably be a little bit. It was given to like a B team. It wasn't made by the original people. Ken Levine wasn't involved in Bioshock 2. It's still a fine game. It's just not as strong as the original, and I think, over time, I think people, or initially at least, people were a little hard on it. But I think the game's fine. I think the game's pretty good, actually. And the DLC is really good. It's same for Bioshock Infinite, which went back to the original team, so Ken Levine back on the game. I think actually Bioshock Infinite is like the worst, probably, of all three of the games, or all three of the series. I have a weird relationship with Bioshock Infinite. I think when I initially played it, I was really high on the hype train, was really enjoying it, and then like as time went on, I think people really soured on that game and really started picking it apart, and I was like, no, like they're right. they're right. Honestly, I love the narrative. I love the production values of the game. I love the world. I think all that is great. I don't think any of it is as good as the original Bioshock. I could go into like probably a 30-minute diatribe of how the narrative isn't as good, how there's plot holes, and it really isn't as clever as it's trying to be, or as, like artsy-fartsy as it's trying to be. I think Bioshock really kind of gets around that a lot better. How the world really isn't as interesting or as messed up as it was in Bioshock 1. And then, like really my main gripes of the game come down to its design around gameplay. I think the gameplay in that game is actually really boring and not well handled in a lot of very obvious ways. Like how, like your weapons, there's like multiple classes of weapons that all do the exact same thing. It's just kind of obviously like sloppy in terms of its design in several areas, in terms of shooting and just gameplay. Some mechanics like the grapple weren't used as much as I really would have hoped, or as interestingly as I really would have hoped, making, shootouts a lot more dynamic. Really didn't turn out the way I would have hoped. There's a lot of little things I can go back and probably dust up on and kind of be like, oh yeah, I remember that. Because at one point I was very knowledgeable and being like, yeah, I think this all there's a lot of issues here. Not all, but it's still a good game. I just wouldn't say it's anywhere near as great as the levels of the original Bioshock, but the team that originally developed it. Originally developed Bioshock 1, developed Bioshock Infinite. So it got a lot more praise. Obviously, Ken Levine went off to found Ghost Story Games, also owned by Take-Two. And he's been making Judas for years. I, for one, am holding my breath on Judas, highly looking forward to it, just because hopefully it's another Bioshock. But from everything I've heard about it, from initial previews and reviews, holding my breath that it will still be anywhere near as good, but we shall see. That being said, Bioshock still holds a lot of cachet. It's been a long time since we've seen a Bioshock game, so it's kind of faded off in terms of relevancy. Obviously, a newer generation doesn't know as much about Bioshock, but could have been. I think still has a lot. I think if any Bioshock game was announced, specifically 4, was announced, I think it would be tearing up social media. I think it would be a big deal. I think it would get a lot of news outlets talking, a lot of influencers, a lot of people would be familiarized with it very quickly. And, I think that shows to me, this was going to be probably something Take-Two has a lot of faith in or wants to do right. And I think from everything that they've shown in the statements that I read, they are very concerned about like Bioshock maintaining that cultural cachet. They don't want to mess this up. They don't want to bring the series back and produce something underwhelming. But the narrative is something that's incredibly noteworthy of the original Bioshock. Honestly, the world is probably the first thing I would think about when I think about Bioshock 1 Rapture is probably the best world in games, period. I can't think of a better world off the top of my head. Rapture is 100% what I go to with that. Obviously, the story would be like number 2, if not number 3, behind the gameplay. But like it's incredibly, I'm not going to say legendary, but it's very noteworthy. I think a lot of people think of the narrative of that game as being very good. I think it's very good for like the first 2/3 of the game. I think the last third of the game narratively is a little bit off the rails in a way that I didn't really want it to be. But obviously the big twist of that game is very noteworthy within gaming and very, I think, at the time, done very well and very something people really appreciated and still remember to this day. So the narrative being a problem is already a huge issue. Staff were told in a letter from 2K that the studio needed to become more agile and efficient, quote unquote. Guess what that means? That's corporate lingo for we're cutting some jobs, baby. We're going to get rid of you guys. Agile and efficient is kind of infamous terminology in a lot of corporate settings that we're going to try to cut some of the fat. And cutting the fat is, of course, laying off people. So another quote that has really come about in a lot of headlines is 2K says, 2K says the game was good, but needed to be great. I think, a lot of people are looking into this quote a lot more than they probably need to based on the past, 4 bullet points I've read out. I think this really is the least interesting thing that came out of any of this. But essentially they're saying, hey, you can't put out a good game anymore. You have to put out a great game because, and what people were essentially extrapolating from that is the gaming landscape is really competitive now, and so if you put out a good game, it's like nobody's going to want to play it because they have 500 other games to play, and a lot of them are freaking free. You can go play Fortnite for free, so it's like, why would you care about a good game? You want to make time only for the things that you actually care about, and those things are probably going to have to be great. If you want a massive seller, it's going to have to be a great game. Yes, I think that's exemplified in pretty much everything now. The only things that typically stand out are the great games, not the good ones. I think Mafia: The Old Country coming out this week is kind of exemplified is a big, kind of touch point for that. It's like, okay, well, it's okay. Well, who the frick wants to play it now? Nobody frickin' wants to play that game, because it's okay. Duh. You only want to play a game that's going to be great, that is going to be fun, that looks good, or looks great. Duh. But essentially, what I think people seem to be really generous with this story. I feel like most people are like, oh, well, 2K, they're trying to salvage it. Essentially, so let's just encompass all of that here, okay? Essentially, if we had to box all that up, the main takeaways here are Bioshock 4 went through an internal development review. They said, this is not as good as we want it to be. We are going to shelve it. We are going to, not shelve it, but we're going to put some more people in charge, try to turn the game around, try to fix the things that aren't working with it. We really want this game to be good or better than it is because we want this game to be the best it can be, right? That's really encompassing all of the points, right? That's your general statement here. People seem to be running with that in the best possible way. And, yeah, that is what all this ultimately means. But, let's go through the bullet points as to how they came to that conclusion. Or how they, it came to the end point of that is, they fired the head of the studio. They demoted the creative director. They are laying off people from the studio. And, they said one of the most important elements of a Bioshock game was one of the biggest problems, and it is not something that you can tweak. You can't tweak a narrative. You can't be well, yeah, just, Frodo freaking never leaves the Shire. You know, like what the frick? Like, you can't just do that. Like, you have to, like, especially for a game, because if you change a large element of the story, you're changing a large element of probably environments that you have to go to, you know, like set pieces that you interact with, characters that you come in contact with, you know, like everything in a game changes, maybe minus the direct gameplay, but like that's not one of the more time-intensive things to design in a game. It is, you know, these set piece moments, these worlds, you know, like all that stuff. Like that's the big thing. And that stuff that's probably going to have to change if you change around the narrative. So like, you know, or at least there's going to have to be some significant changes, I would think, if the narrative is that big of a problem that you're firing a bunch of people over it. You know, like, so when I look at all of that, I say this game sucked. I say when they said this game was good but not great, I say maybe this game was mediocre. I think they're probably being generous when they say good, because you wouldn't fire half the studio over it being good. Like, I think people are like, oh, well, that's just how serious Take-Two is technically the parent company of 2K. 2K is the publishing arm of 2K, or of Take-Two, excuse me. But, you know, like, I think, you know, people are like, oh, you know, like, they just want it to be really freaking good, and they wouldn't say that unless they want it to be really good. I'm like, yeah, but like, I just don't think you'd do this drastic of a shakeup with the whole studio, unless this was like worse than good. You know, like I think what I was initially trying to say there. Sorry, I got freaking sidetracked with trying to describe the relationship between 2K and Take-Two. But you know, I think what most people are trying to say here is that a good game cannot survive in today's climate. So like, yeah, they probably did make a good game, and like that just wasn't good enough. And I'm like, okay, like if you made a good game, hopefully you can tweak a good game into being great. Like I think Bioshock 4 does not have the luxury of being a 75 on Metacritic, you know? Like, this is a game that is going to have to wow. Because Bioshock 1 is considered one of the greatest games of all time by many metrics, by many people. You know, like Bioshock Infinite is considered a classic as well. It's considered a very, very good game by a lot of people. Won a lot of Game of the Year awards that year. You know, like it's considered like all this entire franchise is really minus Bioshock 2. Is considered to be like some of the greatest games ever made. And you really don't have the luxury of coming out and waiting decades between these games and then just being like, yeah, well, here's a 75 for a mainline series entry. I don't think 2K wants to do that. I think they want Bioshock to be a big deal. And by doing that, they're kind of admitting it wouldn't be, you know, like by putting out a 75. Like, I think you're really crippling what could be a start for like a reboot of a very successful franchise. So like, I think this game was mediocre I'm not gonna say at best. I really just think the game was mediocre. Maybe bad, but I think it was leaning towards mediocre. And 2K has come out and kind of made some flowery statements being like, look, the game wasn't that bad, you know, like we really wouldn't do anything if we didn't think it was bad. And it's like, bro, you heads rolled over how bad this was. And not just any heads, like half the dang studio is probably at jeopardy right now, you know, like I don't know how many people are looking to cull in this particular layoff, or even if they technically are going to lay off people, because they didn't technically say that, but they're totally going to do that. But like killing the top two people of the studio, the freaking studio head and the creative director, bro. And like, I think the only reason the creative director wasn't fired outright was because they were a big deal on the original Bioshock game. They had their hands all over the place. If you look at their like kind of past history with the original game. Like they were very high up in a lot of different places. So like they just have a lot of experience of what made BioShock 1 good. And like honestly, I don't know. Was it Ken Levine? I don't freaking know. But like I think we're gonna find out with Judas if it was Ken Levine. I don't know though. Again, I've heard so many varying opinions on him and how he manages studios and all that other good stuff. It's hard for me to say, and I just don't have enough body of work on Ken Levine to really be able to give a confirmation of that, which is why I'm interested in Judas so heavily. But in the process of doing this, 2K came out and said, hey, we've been working on a Bioshock remake, or they didn't say this, but that was one of the things that Jason Schreier reported, was in the process of all these big changes at Cloud Chamber, they shelved the Bioshock remake, which had been in production for a while now. It seemed to be what was on an NVIDIA leak a long time ago. There was an entry in the NVIDIA leak that was Bioshock RTX, which we now kind of assume was the Bioshock remake. So, something I would have easily picked up. I would easily have played that game, easily have paid money for it. I love Bioshock, and just giving me a reason to go back to it and experience it with a fresh set of eyes, heck yeah, dude. I would have 100% paid money for that game. I freaking bought Dead Space and Resident Evil 4, and they were some of my favorite games of last year. I actually had to make an award on my Game of the Year show that was like, what was my favorite game from another year other than Resident Evil 4 and Dead Space, because those would just be the winner. It would be boring. Because, yeah, of course, those games are some of my favorite games ever in the first place, and it's like, well, yeah, I just played them again. They're just even better than they were the first time, so it's like, yeah, I think I would just give the award to them. But, in this instance, I would have easily done the exact same thing for Bioshock. And what I assume was likely the plan, this has probably been in development for years. I think it was probably, if not done, really close to being done. And what likely was going to happen was they'd release the remake, and then that would kind of prime the video game industry, the consumers, kind of get Bioshock back in the ether again, people talking about Bioshock, and then boom, they say, well, here's Bioshock 4, baby. And, then Bioshock 4 has, reintroduced itself to a new generation of consumers, so on and so forth. Gotten people more excited about the brand in general. It is what it is. It seems like because Bioshock 4, I assume, has been pushed back years. From what it seems like, if Bioshock 4 was intended to be a 2025 game, it is easily, a 2026 game, it is easily 2027, 2028 now. Maybe more. That's unfortunate, but if it was going to suck, yeah, I'd probably just rather, I haven't had a Bioshock game in a decade and a half anyway, might as well, just keep it up, I guess, I don't mind, but, or I do mind, but, it is what it is. I think this remake is just probably going to be shelved. It's probably either close to development or done, close to being done or done, and they'll just bring it back out whenever Bioshock 4 is good to go, or tweak it, tool it up again whenever it comes back out, or whenever they're ready to move forward with what they were going to do with Bioshock 4 in the first place. It's just an all-around unfortunate situation, right? I wish Bioshock 4 would come out. I wish we would get more Bioshock. I think it's a great IP. In general, I don't know if it will ever be the same, but, it is what it is. I think the biggest news story of the past 2 weeks, even though it's a little cold, it is what it is. But, it's a big deal. And it's a big IP. It's a big deal that this is, it's going through so much turmoil internally. So that is all I have to say about my wonderful little Bioshock 4. And that moves us on to impressions. Wow, everybody loves impressions, right? And these are truly impressions. So normally, I try to give full impressions, and by that I mean really just kind of review games. I try to try to play an entire game before I talk about it on the podcast. I really prefer when I hear people talk about it. I want to hear a guy who beat the frickin' thing. Like I want to hear, like, did you get to the end of the game? Did you see the ending? Did you deal with literally everything? And give me the full picture here, because I'm going to give my time and my money to this product. Like, I want to know if it was actually freaking good. And, like, if you're going to play, like, 2 or 3 hours of it and be like, no, the game sucked, like, don't even touch it, it's like, okay, that's fine. But if you're going to come to me and you're going to tell me, like, the game is either mediocre or good, I need you to have the full picture here. I want to know, like, really and truly, nothing got better or nothing got worse as you went on. And I think a lot of games that can certainly happen. So like, I like to give the audience that service. I think it's a more interesting thing too. If I came out and I was like, yeah, I played 2 hours of Donkey Kong Bonanza and it's the greatest game of the year. It's like, okay, well, you haven't even gotten out of like the first stage and you think it's game of the year. Like, bro, you could get sick of this game in like another hour and a half, and it could get really repetitive real freaking fast, and then I don't think you would like it very much or something like that. And I think some people have actually kind of soured on Donkey Kong Bonanza depending on who you talk to. I still think the game is overall very good. You can listen to my last episode of the podcast if you want to hear my full impressions on Donkey Kong Bonanza. But this is the first episode in a very long time. I think I'm going to completely skip over what I've been playing that is not fully a full game and talk about 3 things that have come out recently that are just trials for full experiences. Technically, what I've been playing in my free time is I have been trying to get through Metaphor Refantasio. If you know anything about the game, you'll know that it is a very, very long game, and that's why I'm not talking about it. Been pretty busy as well, so I haven't had as much time to really put into it, and given the fact that it's like an 80 to 100 hour game in the first place, that's not a good thing. So who knows, maybe it'll be another 4 to 5 episodes before I'm actually done with the freaking thing. But, I'll talk about that when the time comes, just to, give you an idea that I am not just playing the Battlefield 6 beta. That's right, Battlefield 6 beta has taken the world by storm. Very, very big deal. Happened last week. This past weekend, at least when you're listening to it, this past weekend was also an open beta period for the game, and people have been really liking it. Really, really liking it. And this was probably the biggest news of the past 2 weeks, to be quite honest. This has reached the highest Steam concurrent player count, just on Steam, for either any Call of Duty game or any Battlefield game, at 512,000 concurrent players just on Steam. Yikes. That's very, very high. If you are unaware, that's like top 30 games ever concurrent or something like that of all time. And like the number 1 on Steam for both Battlefield and Call of Duty is specifically Call of Duty. That's pretty impressive. Admittedly, I think a lot of the hardcore like Call of Duty crowd is probably on console, if we wanted to be like super legit, but still very large audience in general on all platforms, so very impressive. Battlefield 6 beta, I gave it a shot. Now I'll explain. I'll go back into detail here. My experience with Battlefield, because I'll tell you this, I'm one of the worst people you can possibly hear impressions for this for. Not because I hate Battlefield, but because I just don't really engage with a lot of multiplayer shooters, or shooters in general. Maybe I'll play a handful of first-person shooter campaigns here or there, but in all honesty, a lot of first-person shooter campaigns aren't either very good nowadays or just don't really exist. They've kind of expanded out into third-person shooter. Like, I can't remember the last time I played a first-person shooter campaign that wasn't like a Call of Duty game, I think that was the last Call of Duty. The last campaign I played that was first-person was Call of Duty. So, like, it is what it is. But that's kind of where my wheelhouse is single-player, story-focused games. So, like, multiplayer, I've just always sucked at. I've never been good. Battlefield and Call of Duty are 2 different beasts. Call of Duty is very much like you see somebody, you shoot them, they die. It's very quick, very snappy. Battlefield has always been a little bit more time to kill. It's been a little bit slower paced, and it's been way more focused on like a team, like an overall vibe almost. Call of Duty, you're supposed to feel like you're murdering everybody in like 2 seconds, and you're like a god in a way. And Battlefield is more like about kind of the narrative of the match itself and unfolding like an actual battle. So if you've never played a Battlefield game, like you're assigned a squad at the beginning of the round, and then you have like a team of like 100+ people, and you're going up against a team of another 100+ people. And really, the main way to win in those games is to work together. You have to work together. And if you don't work together, then you're going to die, and the other team is going to just absolutely run all over you. And I really like that, or I like when it works. When it works, I really like that. When it doesn't work, it is the most frustrating thing ever, because you have teammates that don't care about you. You have, like people not trying to reach objectives in a way that's very good or like, not interesting, but that's helping anybody. And you're like, well, frick, like we have all these people just running all over the place, not really doing anything to help the team. And because of that, we're just absolutely being, lambasted, just totally run over by the other team, and there's nothing we can do. And when it works, though, and you have these really big moments where you're making a push, you have all these people running around, it just seems crazy. Stuff is happening left and right all around you. You feel like this little ant in the middle of this actual battlefield. Like where all this crazy stuff is happening all around you, and it's like, oh man, like I feel like I'm in the middle of a freaking war zone right now. That's freaking cool, okay? So normally my relationship with a Battlefield game, because they cost a lot of money and I have no friends, like really the optimal way to play any Battlefield game is to have like 3 to 4 friends, really like three, because like a squad is 4 people. So like have 3 friends where you can get together and have a squad, and everybody's playing a different role, and you're all communicating over a mic and like talking about, okay, we got to go to point A. Like I need a revive, like somebody dropped some ammo, like there's a sniper over on the cliffs, like that kind of deal. Like that is the optimal way to play Battlefield. Like that's what you want to do. And if you're not doing that, or if you're in a team of people that don't give a frick about you, then, I mean, it's just nowhere near as fun. But like, I don't normally buy the games because I don't have friends that want to play Battlefield. Like most of my friends, if they're going to play a first-person shooter, they're going to play Call of Duty. It just is what it is. And I guess a very noteworthy thing here is the past several Battlefield games have sucked. Like we haven't had a good Battlefield game in years, which I think is the really interesting thing here, that people were so excited about this and jumped onto it so quickly and so eagerly, was because Battlefield 2042, which is the last Battlefield game that came out, was an absolute catastrophe. It was a mess. I remember seeing a story. I have played the beta for most Battlefield games because they always have an open beta, and I'm like, oh well, I'll get my fill of Battlefield just playing this game. Like playing the beta, and like I won't have to buy the game, and because I really don't play these games that much, and I don't have friends that want to play. So it's like, it is what it is. And you really want to get into a multiplayer game like the freaking first couple of weeks, especially if you're casual like me in a multiplayer setting, because the later you get into a multiplayer game, the more hardcore the players are going to be, because they've already filtered out all the casuals, because the casuals don't care as much, and you're just going to get destroyed. So it's nowhere near as fun. But anyway, I was talking about how these games have sucked. But I remember seeing months later, like 6 months after the game launched, they added a leaderboard so you could actually tell who was freaking winning in the games. And I was like, what the frick? This game didn't launch with a gosh darn leaderboard? Like, this is crazy that we ever got this far, and that was one of the many issues with the 2042. That game was apparently buggy as frick, technical issues out the wazoo, and a lot of gameplay elements that just weren't really competitive within the shooter space at the time. And by that I mean good. But like, it is what it is. So like Battlefield has not been good in a long time. So the fact that people were like, yo, I really want to try out this Battlefield 6 beta, even though I've been burned so hard on this. Like, the conversation I heard around this game before the beta came out was, I don't know, man, like, we're really going to have to keep an eye on this one because I just don't really think Battlefield has the ability to compete nowadays. Like, that was literally the conversation I was hearing all over the place. Because like the games had sucked so much recently and we hadn't seen a good one in so long, and I think it just shows like people are desperate for freaking anything right now that it isn't Call of Duty. They want varied multiplayer experiences, and like I think that's great, but like I don't know if Battlefield 6 has earned this. Like, I feel like this was already a success before the beta even launched. Like, I saw stories that like thousands of people were waiting for the beta like to open. Like, they had the executable open on their console or PC just waiting for the servers to go live. And I'm like, they hadn't even played this game or heard people talk about it. I think people were foaming at the mouth for this from the start, which is, that's why I'm saying, like, I don't know if this is necessarily warranted, and I can't say I'm like the best person to really talk about it because I'm not very, I'm not a Battlefield expert, okay? Like, I've played every one of the games. I've played most of the games, but only in, like, a very limited capacity, maybe for, like, a day or two, and normally for the betas. In this instance, I played Battlefield 6, the beta. And drum roll, please. I really, really liked it. I honestly... I will go back and I will play some more this weekend. By the time you're hearing this recording, I have to continue to say that it's over. But like, I'm recording before the weekend is over. I'm definitely going to go back and play it again because I really enjoyed my time with it that freaking much. And that's as a solo player. I was not playing with friends. And you're like, Henry, what's up with that? And it's like, well, you really have to figure out how to play Battlefield, to be frank. The first match or two I played, I was like, I don't like this. I'm not good at this. And that's every first-person shooter, by the way, or really any multiplayer game. When I start playing a multiplayer game, is I'm like, oh, dude, I suck at this. I'm not very good at this. This sucks. And then normally I just drop it. I don't ever get good at it at all. I just drop the freaking thing because I got a million other games I can play that I won't suck at. So it's like, I'll just go play those. Where a freaking 12-year-old won't teabag me, and I feel like a failure of an adult man playing a video game on his weekends. But anyway, in this instance, there are multiple classes in Battlefield. Every Battlefield game has classes. In this instance, I started playing as the Assault. It was just the default class. I didn't know how to change classes at the time. Like I said, I'm a newbie. What can I say? And it was my first match. And I was like, okay, I guess I want to try to heal people. I couldn't really do it because I didn't have the equipment to do it. I was trying to get the heal for the mechanics. I was trying to figure out how to shoot my freaking gun, that kind of deal. You're very, very newbie first steps into any game. And I was just getting mowed over. I wasn't killing anybody. Everybody was killing me. And I was like, this is the experience I have with every Call of Duty game. And this is why I freaking hate Call of Duty, is because I can't kill anybody and everybody kills me. Like, if I have a 1-to-1 kill-to-death ratio in a game, I'm like, we did great. I was like, that is my barrier for, like, success in any first-person shooter multiplayer game. Is like, dang, man, yeah, every time somebody killed me, I also killed somebody, which is like, if you've ever played a first-person shooter game, it's like, oh, well, you definitely need to be killing people more than that. But, like, in all honesty, in order for someone to have a 2-to-1 ratio, somebody's got to have a reverse ratio, bro. Like, that just is going to have to happen. Like, mathematically, if you're killing 2 people for every time you die, then somebody's dying twice for every time they're killing somebody. Like, that just has to be how that works mathematically, right? But, like, anyway, I guess I'm that guy who makes the game fun for everybody else, which is great. But anyway, so I was like, okay, yeah, I don't really love this. Like, I'm just pretty much spawning and dying, and I really don't enjoy the experience I'm having at all. At one point, like, I accidentally tried to enter a tank. I thought people were already in it, and nobody was. and like I ended up being the driver for the tank, and I just drove it straight into the battlefield, and it was immediately shot by an RPG, and like everybody in the tank died, and I felt really bad. But anyway, I then switched to the medic class, the support class, which can revive people, and oh my gosh, I found my rhythm. I ended up reviving like 50 people in a match. I felt like I was able to help other people get the kills that I could not and knew I was never going to get. And like, I felt amazing. I felt like, I would be running across enemy lines being like, oh my gosh, I gotta revive that guy. Like, oh, there's 3 people down over there. Like, it's up to me, the medic, to go help all of them. And like, I would be just like use my little defibrillators, bam, 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 all of them back up. And now we had in Battlefield, a major component to the game and success of winning a match is the number of troops you have in reserve, which is essentially just the number of lives your team has. So like if a player dies, then that number goes down, and if your team runs out of lives, then you just lose the match. And so like a medic is an incredibly valuable resource in Battlefield, because especially a good one, because you could die and it's like, well, we didn't actually lose a troop there. You can continue to play and you're good to go. And like, I think that is awesome. Like that medics are like a legitimately super valuable resource to any team. But at one point I had 50 revives in a match, which is bonkers. And I felt like I was such a valuable contributor to my team as a whole. Not only that, but I was like allowing other people to have a good time and continue playing the game. Not having to respawn and walk all the way back into the map, which is like such a drag in any game like this, and like a waste of time. And it's meant to be for a reason, to balance things out. And I totally get it, but it's like, it is what it is. But like, I felt like an all-star. I had my rhythm. I was running around, bullets whizzing past me. Like I would look over the horizon. I would be like, oh, frick, like there's a massive firefight happening over there. And I just watch like the bullets fly and things explode and buildings cave in on themselves, which obviously all the, destruction is dynamic and stuff like that. They also have a mechanic that I love in this game. Very small touch, but super awesome. Is like you can, if somebody able to be revived, you can start reviving them and pull them out of the fray. So like if somebody died in the middle of like a road or something like that where there's no cover, and it's like you would basically be just a sitting duck reviving them, you can like slowly pull them out of that road and into a bush or something like that and revive them there, or while you're reviving them, like kind of move them out of the way. And so you're saving both him when he respawns and you. And like, that's so fun. Like, I love that. That felt like a real war thing, like I'm like a freaking Saving Private Ryan moment, and like, I felt like the point of Battlefield, I was able to feel it with this particular beta. I felt like I was in the middle of a freaking war zone. I felt like I was contributing to a war zone. I felt like, like every time I did well, my team would do well. And that was like, that's so crazy to even instill that in somebody within a game, of a bunch of random players playing a first-person shooter, how you're able to encourage. Admittedly, that is my personality. That's how I play a lot of these games. When I play, I like playing support classes, which is not normal. But hey, that's, I guess, me. I'm playing a bunch of single-player story-driven games, and everybody else is playing Call of Duty. So like, I'm already the odd man out in games. But like, like, it's so weird to be able to encourage players, which are typically in multiplayer scenarios very selfish, not caring about their teammates, just kind of flying by the seat of their pants and just trying to get a kill to the best of their abilities, and most of them suck anyway. To encourage them to actually fight for a team, to encourage them to try and work together, to have these actual cool moments happening in a battlefield where most people probably aren't trying to do the right thing. Like they're probably doing something stupid as frick, not going to where the objective markers are telling them, like so on and so forth. And that's the magic of Battlefield. You know, like when I have had fun with Battlefield, some of the moments that I've had in those betas or whatever are some of the most fun multiplayer experiences I've ever had. It's just a matter of, I know that if I didn't play the game for like 2 or 3 weeks after release, that the entire community would have already found the meta. You know, they would have already gotten way better than me. You know, like I just wouldn't be any good at the game compared to everybody else. It would be walking into a freaking, you know, den of wolves. You know, like it wouldn't be any fun. And not wanting to pay $70 for a game that I know I'm only going to play for like 2 weeks on 2 weekends and maybe 3 weekends, and then feel, you know, like ostracized by the community because I suck so much. And, you know, like it is what it is. That's how every multiplayer game would normally go for most casual players. But like for me, that's just not worth my money, especially when I try to buy my games at a discount pretty much always. I don't normally buy games at $70 ever. Maybe 2 or 3 games a year I'll consider that, and that's only if I really think I'm going to like those games. It's very, 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 very rare. So, you know, buying a multiplayer game that I know I'm going to enjoy for like 2 or 3 times before it's pretty much like only the hardcores or you know, medium to hardcores are going to be playing it, it's not worth my investment. But these betas are so much fun. I wish that multiplayer games didn't work the way I just said, because it would give me an opportunity to kind of come back and play them. Like Fortnite, I don't feel that way, mainly because I don't feel like winning is like a very, like, is necessarily the point of Fortnite. Like, I think the point of Fortnite is actually just to talk with your friends while you're freaking just, you know, instead of hanging out in person, you just do that in Fortnite. And like, that's kind of your excuse to hang out, and there's just something going on in the background. Battlefield, you have to be a little bit more tuned in. You have to be, it's not about, well, let's go to Twisted Towers, let's land into Tomato Town and go to Twisted Towers and just kind of see what happens. You know, that's the Fortnite match in a nutshell. And really, like, the experience is the journey. Like with Battlefield, you need to be communicating, you need to be talking, you need to be kind of engaged in the game, and I do think that certainly leads to some really cool things. Again, I'm sitting here, I'm like, I'm really happy for people that are enjoying it. I'm really happy that it's doing well. I think Call of Duty needs a competitor. It's been really unfortunate to see Battlefield flounder over the last several years, the last couple of iterations, and like, I really want it to do well. Do I think that this game has made massive change? I mean, from what I can tell and from what I've even heard from the community, this game has not really done anything different. It basically just went back to basics. It just basically made a game that wasn't completely broken and made some slight tweaks to it that aren't like game changers, but they're nice. And it's like, okay, I guess that's cool. Like, that's really nice that they did that. But like, I don't necessarily think that it entails like a huge 500,000 plus concurrent players on Steam for just the opening of the beta. Like, that's insane for a game that's just like, yeah, we changed some things up a little. Basically just didn't put out a completely broken product. It's like, okay, I guess that's nice. And what it just really shows me is there is a definite demand for other multiplayer experiences outside of Call of Duty, even though Call of Duty is still the highest selling game concurrently, like every single year, not even close. Like, and will continue to be. Like, I think, you know, like Battlefield was in a bad place. I think EA knew it. I think they put a lot of resources into making sure this Battlefield did not fail. And, you know, like, honestly, it's surprising to me based on what I've played, being like, I really enjoyed it, but like, I don't even really see what the big difference is between it and like another successful Battlefield game. Like, other than the fact it just works. Like, it's just not broken to frick. Like, I don't know. That's just kind of what I'm getting from it, you know? But as I said, I'm not the Battlefield expert. Really enjoyed my time with it. What changed here? I don't know. I guess the fact that basically nobody liked the last Battlefield and they just kind of were wanting another Battlefield. Because Battlefield is a very successful franchise, and it has a lot of really hardcore fans. But, you know, it is what it is. I think that's pretty much all I have to say about it. And honestly, I kind of want to go play it right now that I'm thinking about it. But I have 2 more games to talk about. Hopefully, pretty quick impressions here. We'll start with the shorter one, Adventures of Elliot. Don't turn off the podcast. I know that name is super lame and probably cost the game a couple 100,000 units. Like, let's be real. Like, a good name is like gonna be like pretty instrumental to selling a game. Like, if your game's name is generic as frick or boring, like nobody wants to play your frickin' game. Adventures of Elliot is probably one of the worst titles I've heard in a really long time. Honestly, like Adventures of Edward is like better. Elliot is just a lame name. It's just lame. You know, it just doesn't sound cool at all. Okay? I'm just going to throw that out there. No offense, I know a few Elliots, all right? I'm not saying they're lame people. I'm not saying the name itself is like your parents, you know, set you up for failure or whatever. I'm just saying it's boring. Okay? That's it. So when you call the game Adventures of Edward, that just sounds boring. Especially Adventures of Edward? That tells me nothing about the game. Every game is technically about an adventure. Something's happening. Somebody's going somewhere. You know, somebody's doing something. What an adventure. What the frick does that even mean? I'll tell you after playing the demo. I still don't know because it wasn't a story-focused demo at all. The game's demo is pretty much heavily, in fact, exclusively focusing on, and even the game starts up the demo and tells you this demo is specifically to try and demonstrate the game's exploration, which I guess I should say this is another game in the 2D pixel art style, similar to Octopath Traveler. I spoke about it in the past couple of podcasts when the game was initially revealed. This game is beautiful, very, very pretty. Really love the art style, the 2.5D art style that Square Enix has kind of adopted for a lot of their games recently. Adventures of Elliot is the notable one in that it's the first one that has a real-time combat. It's not turn-based. You can actively fight things in the world without having to go into a menu. And I really enjoy that. I'd much prefer that over a turn-based game any day of the week. Yeah, that's pretty much all you do. You just kind of, in the demo, you're running around the open world. You're finding secrets. You're going into dungeons and stuff like that, solving puzzles and gathering collectibles to improve your character. And I'll say that I really enjoyed it, actually. I think the exploration is actually the strong suit of this game. I was just like, yeah, I'll explore, sure. Started running around, found an optional dungeon, and like in that dungeon I found like an entirely new weapon, which there are 4 weapons in the game that you can collect. I don't know if this game is like a piece of the open world from the full game. I assume it is, but it just didn't feel like that. It felt like it was trimmed down a good bit. And you could kind of open the map and see like a lot of the cloud, like the fog of war kind of covering up a lot of the places that you could go, but, you know, like in the full game. And I was like, bro, I don't know. This game doesn't seem like it would be that long if this is the amount of the game that I've already played, and that's the rest of the game's map. Like, it really kind of seems like this game would be pretty short. But anyway, I don't know that. I can't say. So I'm assuming the game is much longer than that. It is made by Square freaking Enix, so it's probably an 80-hour game. But anyway, just something I kind of noted. But you start going out, you start in the city, and you go out and you start looking around, and I found a dungeon that had an extra weapon. I was like, wow, that was actually a kind of a fun little dungeon, kind of fun little mini dungeon, and not only that, but it was a really good reward. Started walking in another direction. I bombed open a door, and I found like a secret area that I got like an extra heart piece for, so I could take an extra hit, obviously, if you didn't know what that meant. But like, you know, like I felt like the rewards in the open world were actually pretty significant and pretty interesting, at least for what the demo provided. It may be a little bit more sparse and harder to find actual good stuff in the main game. And then I eventually, after exploring every nook and cranny, because I really did feel like the rewards were satisfying enough to find, and, you know, like big enough to find, it was like, oh, cool, I'll go to the main dungeon. And I did, and it was a pretty it was a bite-sized dungeon. I mean, it's clearly trying to be like Legend of Zelda-esque. 2D Legend of Zelda-esque, which a lot of people are going to enjoy. And I was like, cool. This is pretty bite-sized. Like, I don't love... A lot of the dungeons in Legend of Zelda to me go on for a little too long. Maybe a little too long. This one was like, it maybe took me 20 minutes to get through this dungeon. And I was like, honestly, I'm pretty okay with that. Like, 20-minute dungeon is like right on the nose for like how long I would really want it to be. 15 to 20 minutes is like, that's really awesome, So I was really enjoying that aspect of it as well. I really can't say anything particularly bad about Adventures of Elliot. Combat was nice. Like I said, exploration is really like, that is the star of the show here. Here's the thing. Is it great? No, I don't think so. I think this game is good. I don't think it's great, which is the really sad thing to be saying about it. But I think the true thing to be saying about it, I don't intend on buying this game at all. This game was good. It was not great. I've played a million other games like it. What makes this game truly stand out is that it is a beautiful game. Have I played another game like this before? Yes. I'll tell you what it is. Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Freaking Past. There you go. If you want to play this game, you can play The Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, and it's probably way freaking better. Well, I would actually say I'd probably rather play... I thought Link to the Past is kind of obtuse nowadays. But, like, there are millions of games that obviously copy the Legend of Zelda 2D formula. This is just another one. And I didn't see anything other than it being pretty well designed and being very pretty that really stood out to me. The little very small crumbs of the story and characters that I got seemed underwhelming and uninteresting. And that's what was really going to probably sell me on this game more than anything. Again, this is a very well-designed game. I think it'll be fun. This is not going to set the world on fire, though. I can't see a world where this game sets the world on fire. It will be a low 80s game, I think. I'm thinking like an 83, 84 probably. And, some people will say it's really good. I don't have any problems with it. Some people may even like it. But I don't think anybody's going to love it. And that's like kind of a death sentence. We were talking about that earlier in Bioshock 4. It's like you can't really have a good game anymore. You have to kind of be great in order to stand out. And I think Adventures of Elliot is good. I think a good game with a really boring title, but like I saw some people when this was announced be like, oh, I'm looking forward to this. I have a friend who's like, no, this is my game of the year right now. Like my most anticipated game of the year. And I'm like, I think you're insane. I was like, that was after he played the demo. I was like, I went back and I played it again on the harder difficulty. It's amazing. And I was just like, nah, bro, I think you're insane if you think this is like this is your most anticipated game of the year. I think if you looked at this game and you saw it and you said, this is my most anticipated game of the year, you liked this game because it looked pretty. Like, let's be real. And that's why anybody cared about Octopath Traveler, is because the game freaking looked pretty. I still don't think Octopath Traveler, like every time anybody talks about Octopath Traveler, it's like, that game's fine. There's definitely issues. I don't love it. And it's like, yeah, well, why did anybody care about it? Because it looked really frickin' pretty. Case in point. This is another one that looks really frickin' pretty. Very happy for it being pretty and also not being turn-based. But again, I'd rather play this than Octopath Traveler. At least one. I've heard better things about 2. But still, I don't want to play 2 that much either. But like, bro, I don't know. It's just interesting to see how this turns out. In the long run. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but I see it as being good. That's not a death. That's not the worst thing you could say about a game, but it's like, I don't know. I just don't think it's enough anymore. Which is really sad to say. But really good for gamers when you think about it in a way, And last up is Drag X Drive, or as Nintendo says, Drag and Drive. You really gotta think about it before you put the X in the title. You never know how confusing that's gonna be for people. I say Drag and Drive, or I say Drag X Drive. They say Drag and Drive. What the frick? What is it? Well, Nintendo specifically said it's drag and drive, but come on, man, the X, what the frick? But anyway, Drag X Drive, drag and drive. I'm really gonna have to settle on that eventually. Is one of the 4 Nintendo Switch 2 exclusives. And they had an open beta period for the online portion of the game, / some single player. And over the past weekend, really odd. If you got into it, congrats. It was only like on 2 days, and it was only during weird Japanese hours, and it was only for like 2 hours of the day. It like Battlefield, it's like you can play the game for 4 days over the course of the weekend, and it's open 24/7. And it's like, that's cool. And then like Drag X Drive is like, well, you can only play the game from 5 Pacific to 7 Pacific on Saturday, and 3 Pacific to 5 Pacific on Sunday. I don't remember the exact hours, but like it was like you really needed to keep an eye on the gosh darn times. So it was not very easy to keep up with, and hopefully you were free. Like you really need to set some time aside. Like, hey, like I can't make that meeting. I gotta hop on to Drag X Drive real quick, because there's only a limited time on this beta. But anyway, I happened to get in on one of those times, happened to be available, and this game is now out, and it is like at a 60 on Metacritic, really freaking low. And I am not surprised based on what I played in the beta. Honestly, I can probably just give you impressions for the full game, because it sounds like, based on reviews, there is not much different between what I played and what everybody had access to when you pay $20 for it. Yes, $20. Nintendo came out and was like, we're going to have a varied pricing structure because some games are worth more than others. And obviously we have pretty much all of that was divisive. Every single bit of it was divisive, because they had Mario Kart World at $80, which is obviously divisive, the first $80 game. They had Nintendo Tour, Welcome Tour, which was $10, which pissed a lot of people off. Which honestly, like, if you know what you're getting into, I honestly don't think it's that bad of a deal. We had Donkey Kong, which was $70, which is just traditional. And then you had this game, which was $20. And it was like, what the frick? Why are we all over the place? But, they thought that Drag and Drive had twice the value of Nintendo Switch World Tour, or Welcome Tour. So, Drag X Drive is the game that they were really pushing as like, this is what is going to sell you on the mouse controls. Which I have been a notoriously big Debbie Downer on the whole Switch functionality, the mouse functionality for the Switch 2. Ever since it was announced, I've always been like, bro, I don't give a frick about this. The hardcore gaming community has eaten it up. They have said, hey, we love PC, so we love the idea of a mouse control because I like playing games with a mouse. It opens up so many ideas of me to be able to basically play Civ on my Switch. Like, that's pretty much all I've ever heard about it. Is like the hardcore gaming crowd being like, I like playing with mouses, and therefore I am going to like playing with this too. And it's like, okay, I don't see why you would do that. And I've always been like, the Switch 2 is a portable console. It's really not a PC. So you're not going to, like, a lot of the games that you'd be playing, like, you basically can't freaking play this game on the bus. Like, you can't do that. And, like, this game is definitely an example of that. If you're playing this game on the bus, you're, one, going to look stupid, and two, not going to have a fun time. So Nintendo has, for the Welcome Tour and everything, you can play that. I have, and it basically is like, hey, you can use this mouse on anything, any surface, your legs. It even tells you that when you start up Drag X Drive, is you can just play this on any surface. You can play it on your dang lap. You put the Switch 2 controllers on your lap and use them like a mouse on your lap, or you can play them on a coffee table or whatever. Doesn't matter. Play them frickin' anywhere. We don't care. It'll work. And I've always been kind of a Debbie Downer. Welcome Tour kind of turned me into a little bit more happy about it. I was like, okay, like, I'm utilizing it now. I'm using the functionality now with some mini games that they've made. I can see some potential with it. What really is scary about it is, like, do these mice work? Like, especially when you're playing on, like, your frickin' lap or whatever. Like, that just seems like such a recipe for disaster. Like, I wouldn't use a mouse on my freaking knee. Like, I wouldn't do that, or my pants or whatever. I would not think it would work very well. But Nintendo was like, no, you can do it anywhere. I played it on my legs. So I played this beta on my legs. I felt it was pretty appropriate. You know, like, Drag X Drive, I suppose I should explain, is basically wheelchair basketball. Which weirdly, Nintendo has said it's not wheelchair basketball. It's like robo basketball. But you're basically a robot in a wheelchair, and, like, you use one controller to, you know, move your hand and rotate the wheel on your left side, and one to do on the right side. Just like you would see if you've ever watched somebody play, like, professional basketball, wheelchair basketball. You've probably seen that before. How they kind of rotate and move and, you know, like, go really fast down the court by, like, you know, pushing the wheels on the wheelchair, obviously. But, like, in this case, you'd be doing it with the controllers. So I was like, okay, yeah, that just seems like the obvious way to play this game is probably on your legs, because that's kind of what the motion would be in real life, is pushing kind of right next to your leg. And I did that, and the tutorial, I was like, is this just, like, what's going on here? Am I doing something wrong? Because it's not very responsive. And I was surprised to see the reviews, because pretty much everybody had the exact same problems I did. Was they were like, the controls are not very responsive in this. They really need to tweak it. Like, I tried moving my wheel. I tried doing this, that, and the other, and, like, it wouldn't always do what I wanted it to do. And that's 100% an issue I ran into very, very early on playing just the tutorial, which you're required to go through the tutorial before you start actually getting into the main game. So, like, I was like, okay, I'm not really able to control the game as well as I would have wanted to. Not only that, but the tutorial is fairly lengthy, and, like, I was kind of tired. By the time I got out of the tutorial, I was like, dude, because they'll just be like, okay, well, this is how you go forward. This is how you turn. Why don't you just do that for, like, a minute? And, like, you just have to run around for, like, a minute, just, like, apparently getting used to the controls. But, like, it just takes, they just, like, really elongate the tutorial. And this is a very physical game. Like, it's like, you can't just, like, roll your mouse a little bit. It's like you roll your mouse a lot. Like, you have to roll your mouse a lot in order to go fast in the game. And you have to roll it very fast in order to go even faster. So, like, and the motions have to be really stretched out over a long period, because, like, just a little bit of a mouse movement will only move you a little bit. But you have to, like, really push and flick the controller off of your leg, or off of the table, I guess, in order to get, like, the full range of motion and the full amount of speed. So, like, if you want to move in this game, you really have to put in the effort. And the tutorial does not really give a frick about you and your health, is what I was about to say. But, you know, fatiguing you. It does not give a frick. So it's just like, yeah, just frickin' run around for, like, a minute and get used to the controls. And it does that, like, 5 times. And I'm just like, bro, like, just let me play the freaking game. Like, I kind of get it. But, like, they really wanted to make sure that you understood how the motions worked. And so, anyway, got through the tutorial and played a match. And I very quickly was like, holy frick, I can't control this thing worth jack. If you want to break, you have to, like, not only do you have to, like, lift the mouse up off your leg and then tilt it forward and press a button. So it's kind of like stomping your foot almost to, like, stop the wheelchair in a way, if you wanted to think about that as, like, a visual representation in a way for the controller, in a way. But, like, I couldn't really get that figured out. Like, it was very difficult for me to understand how to do that. That was easily the most finicky thing I had to do. Turning was very finicky. Couldn't really get that worked out. I was, you know, like, I felt like everybody was maybe having an easier time than me in the match that I played. It was very obvious that nobody really knew what the frick was going on, but, like, I felt like I had the least amount of figuring out what was going on amongst the people I was playing with. Maybe not. But, like, The camera was also a problem because you're playing it that way. Like, there really is no camera movement because you have no control that has... you can still access the analog sticks, but, like, they kind of remove that from you because you're not ever looking at the analog sticks to even, like, have your thumb on them to know where the frick to move them. And I would have been confused to be like, well, am I moving it up on the controller, or am I moving it up on the... like the view that I have of the controller, because those would be two different directions because I'm holding them differently now, because that's what the game requires. So it's like, what the frick? Like even if they did give you access to camera, like how would you really, like you'd have to get used to it for a while in order to even know how to operate it well. So like you really don't have access to a camera. So like I was like trying to look around at my teammates, like who has the ball? Like, can you pass to me? Like I was trying to pass to people and like I would press the button. I just thought it did it automatically. Nah, dude, you have to like be looking at your teammate and like pass in that direction. I thought shooting worked that way too based on the tutorial. No, it doesn't work that way. You have to really be like looking at stuff and like moving in that direction. I was like, what the frick? I was like, this game is way far off from what I think they really wanted it to be. And I think Nintendo kind of knew that. Otherwise, because they haven't talked about this game. This game has been like no marketing. It's like, this is a Switch 2 game. But we aren't going to talk about it other than the fact that it exists. Like that's pretty much it. Like it's a $20 game, which for Nintendo, holy frick, that is like comparative to the rest of their games. That's like they're basically giving it away to you, which is just a gripe with Nintendo in general, I suppose. But like, I don't think Nintendo had a lot of high hopes for Drag X Drive. And reviews show that everybody was having the exact same problems I was. There was some fun like interaction within the lobby. People were like kind of doing tricks in the lobby, having fun, running into people. It was, it's fun to kind of interact in that same Nintendo way where you'd expect. There's some mini games, some extra stuff to kind of fool around with in the lobby as well. Honestly, probably had more fun doing those than I did actually playing the game. A lot of times I would roll, like there was a time trial that just goes straight in the course, and like I couldn't even do it because I was rolling my mouse across my leg and it wasn't registering. So I was like, and it would just never, it would never take. So I was only rolling like maybe one of my mice, and the other one was taking and the other one wasn't. And so it was like I would just be rolling in a circle. Just in a circle, and it's like all you need to do is just go straight in a straight line for like 5 feet, and like that's a challenge. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, I don't need to deal with this anymore. Deleted it immediately after I completed one match. I had no interest in going any further into the game. Was not fun. Again, I don't think Nintendo even thinks it's fun. I think they just kind of were like, yeah, we'll get some money off of it. Sure, put it out there, and it's pretty much my experience with Drag X Drive. So wouldn't recommend it. If you really need something, if somebody told me, hey, I'm looking for the worst Switch 2 game by Nintendo right now, I think a lot of people would be like, oh, Welcome Tour, it sucks, don't play it. Bro, I had way more fun playing Welcome Tour than I did playing Drag X Drive. Not even close. Admittedly, you got to know what you're getting into with Welcome Tour. It's basically a nerd thing where, like, if you just want to know facts about the console and the technology and how Nintendo decided to make the console, that's your thing, which it is my thing. I think that's fascinating. That was what was worth it to me with Welcome Tour. Drag X Drive, I wouldn't recommend it all. Like, I wouldn't tell anybody to touch this game with a 10-foot pole. Wait until Metroid Prime 4 comes out if you really want to utilize the mouse controls. That game will have full mouse control functionality on Switch 2. So if you want to aim with like mouse controls or something, you can. with Metroid Prime 4. Do not freaking buy Drag X Drive if you really want to fully maximize the usage of your Switch 2's mouse functionality, because that's literally all it really is trying to do. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about Drag X Drive. That was all of my impressions. All limited time demo options. I guess Adventures of Elliot is not a limited time demo, but all, not full games, not even games that had released at the time that I played them. So now Drag X Drive is out, but you get it. Anyway, it's different. It's different. I normally don't give impressions like that, but kind of interesting to do and fun to do. So I get why people do it. I try to give you the best, all right? I only try to give you the best. And in this instance, I think they were games people were talking about. They were interesting games. So it was worth it in a way. But that wraps it up for this episode of the Plug in Play podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate you. Yes, you listening to this episode right now. I really do. I say it every episode, but I really mean it. Without you listening, I wouldn't do this. And I really feel like I really enjoy doing this, specifically when people listen. If nobody listens, there'd be no reason to do it. But because you listen, because you give me your time and your attention, I really love talking about this stuff. I really love talking about games. I don't get to do it as much as I'd like in real life. Nobody is a big enough nerd. Nobody, I mean, would you? Okay, maybe you would because you've listened to this for 2 hours. But if most people would not listen to somebody talk about this for 2 hours, they would want to jump off a building. Okay? They would be dumbstruck by the amount of things one man can say about video games. So if I couldn't do this, I would be unfulfilled, I feel like. I love the conversation. I love the discourse. And I hope that, maybe, I've made you a part of it in a way. You've allowed me to be a part of it for sure. So thank you, friend. I appreciate you making it this far. I appreciate you sticking around. And you know what? I hope you play some good video games soon. Just have a good day for me. For me, would you do it for me? I hope so. But again, thank you for listening. And ladies and gentlemen, I will be signing off. See you next time. We'll be talking about Gamescom. That'll be a big one. That'll be a big episode coming up next. So stick around. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.